So I want to first introduce everyone. This is Lynette Elliot. She is the actress that played Miss Goalieyoth, and she did an amazing job, as everyone will see. Yes, indeed. And it's so funny because it's great. One thing I love about this is that you're going to get to see her personality outside of the role, which I think is so important and so key.
Lower your hands.
Oh, my fault. As I get them in the way. So she plays a key character. Everyone knows, well, a lot of people know about the story of David and Goliath. And everyone knows that Goliath was the main antagonist, and she actually played the Goliath in this story. So I just want to start off by asking her a few questions. And the first question I'd like to ask you, the story of David and Goliath is one of the most well-known stories in the Bible. What are your thoughts on the classic story itself?
I did a little research. I tried to do my homework.
Yes.
And what I discovered is that there are some misconceptions about the biblical story. Apparently, it's less of a situation where an underdog wins. It's more of a situation of perception and assumption.
Right.
Because David had a condition, or Goliath rather, had a condition that rendered him larger than most humans. He was almost 7 feet tall, apparently, by some accounts.
Yeah, right.
And the same condition, if you look up, I'm trying to remember what it is.
Marfans?
No, it's not giantism. It's I have it. I was going to bring notes.
Okay,
I have it in there.
Totally fine.
But the same condition renders people very nearsighted and gives them double vision. And while he was a giant human, he couldn't see. He had a lot of trouble seeing. And the perception was that because he's this giant, he can just do anything.
Right.
He can take over anything.
Right.
But the truth of the matter was that he couldn't see, and he's basically this giant bumbling body who needs a means of being steered somehow. And people put him up front in fights because he was big and he could hit people with his saber.
Right.
And kill them very easily because they were smaller than he was.
Right.
But apparently David was aware of this condition and knew that Goliath couldn't see him very well. And in the story, Goliath calls out to David. And he doesn't call out as a challenge. He calls so that David will come close enough that he can kill him. And David knows this. So David gets close enough that he can take a shot. And the other misnomer is that he had a slingshot, the little wide with the little rubber band. That's
not how slingshots are made back then.
That is not a sling.
No.
What he had was a sling. It's something that armies used with stones, and they were trained to kill with these things. And shepherds carried them because they had to defend flocks against wild animals and people who wanted to take away their livelihood. And David knew that if he could get a good shot, he could probably take this guy down. And he was a pretty sure shot. And what I read is that a sling can deliver the stopping power of a .45 caliber gun if it is properly executed. So David got close enough to Goliath to hit him. I've heard two ways. He hit him either right between the eyes, but if he had done that, actually, Goliath would have fallen backward. And apparently there are accounts of him falling forward, which some historians think that David actually got him in the leg and it took him down because the pain in his leg was so great that he fell. And I think either way, David cut his head off once he was on the ground and showed everybody this is what I did. But the whole point of it isn't this lowly shepherd boy, and no such thing as a lowly shepherd. They were guards.
Yes, correct.
They were the sharpshooters of their time. They worked alone, and they had to be really good at what they did in order to protect what was worth money and what was worth that was wealth. Yeah, absolutely. It was more of a David had an advantage over the perception that others had of Goliath. And because he had the information that he had, he was able to overtake that individual. So that's what I found interesting is it's not this little kid fighting this giant.
Right.
It's this very smart young man fighting somebody who thinks he has an advantage. So
it's funny because that ties very into how this story plays itself. Excellent. Next question: what was it like playing such an evil and brutal character?
Oh, it was fun.
Right? How did you reconcile who you are versus the character who you had to play?
I spent a long time trying to figure out. You and I talked about this. Trying to figure out who this woman is. And we talked about evil.
Right.
And what I think the thing that I ran across that really sat with me was that evil is not the opposite of good. It's the abandonment of any self-control. It's the total abandonment of any self-control.
Giving up the fight.
You don't give up the fight. You give in to the desire.
Right.
You give in to the desire. We all have a monitor. We all have this thing inside us that says this isn't right, or I shouldn't do this, or I should behave this certain way because it's kind and it's good.
It's the right thing to do.
And evil is exactly the opposite of that. Evil goes, yeah, I want to do this, so I'm going to
do it. Yeah.
And I think once I understood that, it was easier to get into that kind of mindset. Because there's stuff that all of us have. I'm sure there's stuff that all of us have wanted to do.
Of course.
You see something and you go,
right.
And you have that moment of, oh, if only I could, but I'm not that kind of person.
Right.
But she is that kind of person.
Correct.
And to understand that was easier than just trying to be evil. Because I'm not an evil person. I'm like the last person on earth who would hurt somebody else.
I can attest to that. Yes.
Yeah, there were tears.
Right.
But yeah, she's ugly.
Right.
And I hate her.
Right.
I hate her.
And you actually taught me the reason that I thought at one time I could possibly try to act, but I'm telling you, the fact that you guys do what you guys did showed me acting is not for me. It's not for me. I don't have that in me.
Wasn't sure it was for me at this point either, but.
Well, let me ask you this as well. This is probably one of the biggest things that when we cast for this, we wanted to make sure we could find someone who could get into this role, and despite not being a giant. So, how did you prepare for the role of Goliath, who was said to be, like you said, almost 7 feet tall? What did you do to prepare? How did you, being 5'2", maybe
5'5",
5'5", I'm sorry, 5'5", maybe 100 pounds. I don't know. How did you?
I'll never tell.
Right. How are you able to show such and become such a dominant character?
Well, anytime you ask an actor how they prepare, we could spend days telling you all the little stuff that we do and, little rituals that we have and how we do the work in our head. But the short answer to that question is that size is really irrelevant until you put it into a mindset. It's like if you put a Chihuahua in a room with a Rottweiler, the Chihuahua is always going to fight really hard because they're small, but they have these big personalities. They are fearless. They're afraid of nothing. And what I loved about the scene when I auditioned was that she does that total 180. She goes from being this awful person to acting like she's normal and kind, like a real mom to these other people.
Right.
But in reality, she has nothing to lose. She's above it all. She doesn't think the rules apply to her. She's going to do whatever the heck she wants to do. And I don't think that she felt any accountability to anyone else on any level. And that's bigger. That's a really, that's a large ego. And I guess that's kind of how I approached it. It had nothing to do with I feel tall today.
Right.
Because
how much you feel doesn't mean that you're right. Yes.
But I think size is also power, and she has a very great amount of power. She has a great amount of power over those 2 children.
Yes.
And she knows it.
Yes.
and she's not afraid to wield it.
That's true.
So, you know, if you can kind of embrace that and channel that and go, you know, this is
Who I am.
this is yeah.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of nothing.
Right.
And which is funny because there are things that scare me and then there are things that worry me.
Mhm.
You know, and she doesn't have any of that. I don't think anyway.
No, I agree with you. But I think you did an excellent job, and I'm very glad that we number one cast you. Right?
Well, thank you.
Yes. Can't wait to go over all the stories on how everyone got the roles that they were, and I truly believe that it was a blessing and it was a reason that you here. I'm so glad that you got this role, and I didn't know at the time, but I am so glad you got this role, and I thank you so much for playing Miss Goalieyoth.
Oh, thank you.